Hello, it's Laurie or BlockchainBrad, and today I'm speaking with Pavel Bains. He is the CEO of Bluzelle, and he's here to provide you with an update for Bluzelle. He is in transit right now, busy as always. Pavel, thank you very much for your time.
Hey, Brad, good to talk to you again.
Likewise, mate. Now, for those of you who would like to know more about Bluzelle, obviously there's more information available online, but right now the idea is to provide you with an update exclusively on what they've been doing as they've been building. Now, Pav, let's pull it back a bit though, mate. We've spoken before. To better understand what you've been doing, we need to start with what you've already built and what you started with. Now, you claim that you are all about serverlessness, trying to build a decentralized database fundamentally. Can you give us a bit of a rundown holistically on what you're actually about?
Yeah, so Bluzelle, the initial intent always was to build a decentralized database using blockchain technologies and edge computing. What we have been able to do now is actually deliver on that after a year and a half and really find out what are the real things that applications need from a development side and consumption side. Right. And we've been able to basically build that database out. What we found was that there's really 5 requirements that modern applications need to be. And that's whether it's a decentralized application or even a serverless application where trends are going. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that the 5 areas that we see is that people want it to be simple to implement and get there started going. Second would be that they want it to be no operations on the back end and it can scale automatically, because a lot of companies don't have the big R&D budgets to run IT departments, things like that. So if you can go decentralized or serverless, it takes a lot of friction out, and not just physical costs, but man-hour costs on their end. Okay. Third would be to be able to go, multi-cloud, multi-region right away, instead of always just picking the points that, hey, we're in this country, let's go to this one, spin up another server. By being decentralized, we're basically saying that, hey, we can make you global right away and you don't have to do any extra back-end work. Okay. The fourth would be pushing data right to the edge. So if you have edge points around the world, when a consumer is using a product, they're never going to have any speed issues. Stuff will get to them right away. And then the fifth would be, we found that people want predictable pricing. When you really look into a lot of these database systems that people are using, it's very confusing. It's hard to estimate what your cost is going to be, because they can say, well, you change the region, you got to partition this, do that, you added more duplication or data transfer. So having a simplified model where like, hey, I just pay this, and I know if I go over it, I pay more, that's fine, as long as I have predictable pricing. Right,
okay, so you've got these 5 criteria that clearly are important. You've worked out since you started building Bluzelle that this is what the market's demanding, essentially. So how do we translate that into Bluzelle? How do we know that you're hitting the nail on the head with these points empirically? Can you talk us through some of the evidence that you have actually built in to show that you have the capacity to really lead this out in the real world?
Well, the points are that the product works. We can actually demonstrate that, hey, we have 20 nodes around the world. They're in multi-regions. Data is actually replicated and secured at the endpoints of those. And then when a user actually uses it, let's say we run our tests, they're actually getting 30 times the performance of the traditional model. So it looks, it's performing definitely right there. We've got all the things worked out. Mm-hmm. The replication is there. And really, it's a good time to start going to market.
Okay, so replications there. You mentioned 20, is that 20 nodes that are currently operational?
That's right.
Okay, so in that context, talk us through the value of decentralization, especially since we're talking about serverlessness as a key component of your architecture. Having this number, obviously there are other projects that have substantially more. What's the value in having sort of a nuanced or hybrid approach where you have a degree of sort of respect for centralized models, but also fundamentally are decentralized in your plan?
Well, I mean, you can go and say, let's go get more nodes and more nodes and more nodes and build that capacity. But if you don't have that demand on the customer side, then you just built out a network that's really not being used. What we found was, hey, let's focus on making sure that these 20 nodes work. What we're saying can be done. Can it store, data on it and be replicated across, and can people grab it fast? If we can do it with 20, and that should be enough to serve current customers that we want to go to, then it's a matter of just saying, okay, now we've got increased demand. Now let's go get, more nodes to join up. And that's where basically, the whole crypto economics model comes in of using the token, having it easy for any person to basically join the network and start staking tokens and earning money on it. So we don't think there'll be an issue of, right now wasn't that, hey, let's go get a bunch of supply built. That's planned for November time that we can open that up. But right now is let's just get the product working in a small state that it can do what we said the market needs it to do.
Right. Well, can you talk us through a little bit more about the product in operation? Paint us a picture of Bluzelle now with, for example, consumer numbers or who's actually engaging with you. You're the CEO, so obviously you're talking to parties that want to use Bluzelle. So what does it look like in 2019 now compared to when we last spoke? Obviously, it should be significantly different because you have products now.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we first started, it was all theoretical, right? You're trying to say, we're going to build this, what's going to happen. And because we're building a database that you can't just, fork and launch right away and copy over, we had to build everything from scratch. So if you look at it, we spent 18 months really building that out. And, just constantly working with companies to get developers or, enterprises to say, okay, what's the feedback? What do you guys need? So right now we do have companies that are actually testing and been working on, POCs for the last couple of months that we'll be able to deploy, announce later, but no real names that we can actually put out there as of yet, because they like to run their whole tests. But if you go to what was different from before, what is now is that, like I said, we can actually show them that we're 30 times faster than existing solutions. Oh, the pricing will be, X number. That's what we project now. Oh, the whole nodes where you're replicated, we know which regions do you want to be in? Do you want to be in, let's say Korea, Japan, Singapore? Yeah, we have all those covered right away.
Okay, so clearly with those criteria you mentioned, they are also backed by your capacity, your technology. You feel comfortable stating those, and that you're confident that you can service the market based on those criteria. But are there any examples of code, for example? How open source is your technology? Or are there any demos for the public, let's say? Because obviously you're in NDAs with some serious partners now. But for those who are trying to support and understand Bluzelle, how can we really be reassured that you have the tech empirically shown and that we can experience, that we can see?
Well, we do have our, our GitHub out there, and people can see the activity that's out there put out. We do a sprint every 2 weeks, and we actually try to accompany it with a video and a new feature demo of what was achieved. We do have demo videos on our, our site and YouTube where it actually goes into that performance. So we actually walk through that. Hey, I'm an end user playing this game. I'm in, let's say, Singapore, and the database is in Virginia. What's the current database speed? Oh, when we turn on Bluzelle, look, it was like 30 to 40 times faster. So we've been able to demonstrate that flat out for the last couple of months.
Got it. Now, speed seems to be a reoccurring theme here. You mentioned it's 30 times faster than your typical centralized system. But we also see narratives and hear narratives that are faster than that even. We even hear ridiculous claims of things like a million TPS. Obviously, that's not the end goal. It's not necessary to have that kind of TPS anyway. But in the context of competition, in terms of scalability, in terms of efficiency and high throughput, low latency, where do you fit in this discussion, do you think? How important is it that you have this speed that you currently have?
It's very important because as all products are actually going for global audiences, you don't want to have those slowdowns on the network side of when, data is needed to, be transferred and consumed and used. So you don't want to have any delays on that. So I think it's in a modern world, or in the current world of having global applications, or even if you're going multi-region. So, I mean, find me one company that says, hey, you know what, I'm just going to focus on one region, right? That's rare now. They might not need global support, but they do need multi-region support. And going multi-region means that they need to be able to deploy fast and be able to serve their customers in a quick way. And a decentralized database like Bluzelle actually accomplishes that.
Got it. Now, when we talk about permissioned and permissionless systems, often there's an argument put forward that permission systems are essentially closed databases. So in that respect, if we can consider the whole gamut of DLT, are you up against all the other infrastructural projects that are also trying to build out their own processes, their own blockchains, because they are serverless, and they are decentralized. What sets you apart if that is the case? If they're all trying to compete for the same market?
No, I think all those blockchains, everything is trying to compete for different customers, right? So our customer base is really, we're just focused. We're not being a blockchain that says it can do the full stack and everything on it. We're saying that, hey, we're going to excel at being that database that these new applications need, whether they're dApps or serverless, like we've mentioned. But basically, we're just going to focus on that and provide that to support that. Like, you don't look at a MongoDB as saying, hey, they can do everything under the sun. They're doing what they want to do best. So I don't think we're competing with any of these blockchains. We're just all using the same technologies and principles.
Sure.
When you come into permissioned or permissionless, even on our system, if a customer says, you know what, we want to have our own like kind of private, hybrid, decentralized database system, not using other people's authoritative nodes, we want to run those, hey, we can actually deploy that. That's not an issue.
Okay, well, that's important because obviously for privacy reasons, as you'd appreciate, and for security, many of the enterprise and private sectors don't want to just simply use an open ledger. They do want to have that flexibility inbuilt. Is that one of the things you're finding as the CEO, that's reaffirmed by their response, by their questioning, by their ability to have permissioned aspects built in for their own use of Bluzelle?
Well, as a database, what they want, we want to give them the option that it's not one way or the other, right? Because some companies might be like, hey, we have to start in a permissioned way or a hybrid, closed private database. The other one's like, hey, we don't mind storing it on other ones. So we don't want that point to be a barrier to entry to using us as a product. So it's really trying to figure out, what does the customer need?
Right. And speaking of customers, well, Pavel, that implies costing. And you mentioned before that you are quite competitive in that respect. Can you talk us through how that works? Are there licenses, or is there a fee structure? How do you sustain yourselves as a team and create revenue by having some sort of pricing model?
Well, our end goal is, once we move to the next stage to get real customers, is that we should be generating revenue. And how we've priced it is that, hey, might not be like flat out the cheapest, right? Because sometimes these companies, the enterprises, whether mid-size or large, they're not looking just for the cheapest one. They're looking for something that's the most simplest. And what we learned was that if we can make pricing predictable and direct, something that you always bring up, like, let's be transparent, not have that, oh yeah, we charged you for this extra data replication and you did a data transfer here and we had to charge you there, and you partitioned this and that, and it's unpredictable and unknown. What we want to do is complete transparent that, hey, this is how much it is and here's what you get.
Got it. So will you publish that once that's all clear? Because obviously you're moving towards that now. You're at that end phase, the technological development, so that you can prepare for these clients and customers. So when will that become known to the public?
Oh, I would say probably in the next couple of months, once we have like, hey, the first customer is confirmed and here's the pricing model that we feel has been vetted and is achievable, right? And then obviously we'll have a free tier as well, saying, for X amount of megabytes, you can use a network for free. Once you go above that, this is how much it's going to cost, and we'll have those breakdowns.
Got it. Now, I wanted to talk to you, I was going to do this later, but this makes a perfect segue, about your token, because if you're moving towards this client base, and clearly that was always the premise, and from the outset, the capital raised was to build this utility. How is it that we can trust that utility token will emerge, with that true utility? Because if you're in that stage now where you're literally building the tech, the fundamentals and everything to condition this, to make this possible, how can we be reassured that you're definitely going to have empirical evidence that this is a strong utility for the future?
It really is going to come down to, for us to scale, right, and provide the credits and get more customers, we're going to need more of those endpoints around the world, storage devices. And that's where, as from the beginning, that's where the token comes in, right? It's incentive for people to join the network and start earning something back. So when people ask like, oh, how are you able to do those 5 things? I fundamentally believe is because we went decentralized. If we used, the same model that everybody was doing for the last 10, 15 years, I don't think you can achieve those 5 critical criteria. It's because it's decentralized, we're able to do that. And if we want to grow the network, we need to have more people join in, and we have to incentivize them to be part of that.
Got it. So fundamentally from the outset, the structure is to get people in to take part in the ecosystem. And that's obviously very important. But how do we then know that there's a transitioning into the uptake from the customer side? You know, it's tough to take this on face value because haven't yet seen those customers. Are you confident that there is a pipeline of customers to really utilize Bluzelle? So that's more what I'm getting at.
I mean, that's what we've spent, that's why everybody's in this, right? And is really getting into the last couple of months of positioning the product in a way that people really understand what they're going for. Is our customers really ideologically, of course, we want them to say no control, centralized control of data, data privacy should be respected. I think that's a nice ideological philosophy thing for us to carry as a company. But how many products out there? Most products think that, hey, the data is secured and it is taken care of. So the really positioning is what we've said before of just like simple deployment, instant scalability, right. No operations. That's what really matters. And it was really about getting that positioning down of where those customers are and how they're using the products and where we fit in.
Sure. And what about the process? Obviously, fiat is still relevant. You can't, remove that from the equation. Now, will you be doing back-end handling of the token? Say, for example, I want to do business with you as a prospective client in the future, but I want to use fiat and through your pricing model. Can I do that? And will you handle the token conversions, so that, we can see that correlation of value between token utility and Bluzelle as an ecosystem?
Yeah, and once again, in an ideal world, we'd love everybody to use tokens and swap them around and use decentralized exchanges, right? We know that's a bit far off. So the customers that we're going for, like enterprise, we have to be able to let them pay that the way they're used to, and then on the back end show that, hey, we got this money and buy it off, right? Convert it to tokens, and then redistribute that in the mathematical manner that we have.
I see. And so is that planned? I mean, that's the key, because I totally agree, is that many parties, business especially, enterprise, they just simply are not ready for utilizing tokens initially. That may come in the future, but as long as you're making this seamless and easy for them, uptake is much more likely in that respect. So are you confident in the model you've built into the structure so that there is that correlation of the utility token and the growth of your ecosystem?
Oh, 100%. It's first is nail down the product, doesn't match the people's needs. And then, hey, whichever way they want to pay, that's simplest, we can execute that for sure. I mean, imagine going to, if you're, a decent sized company, going to the accounting department and saying, hey, I need a purchase order for X number of tokens to go pay for a service we need. That'd be an accounting nightmare for them at that time, right?
Right.
So we need to make these things simpler for now.
Right, and you raise a really good point. I've never actually asked this question before, but let's say someone does make that fiat transaction, there's the back-end handling. Surely the transparency, the literal mathematical algorithmic transparency of the blockchain affords for, really confident and really clear auditing, potential, because if someone does come and assess Bluzelle, it's all there. Right from the fiat to the token transaction. Are you confident in that respect that we can trust that back-end conversion is actually something that is even more transparent than it ever has been before because you're utilizing blockchain?
Yeah, I think there's a definite way that you can say, hey, this pricing came in, and once we have the model set up of what the payouts are to the different networks, and you can show that, hey, the funds are actually getting redistributed, like, tokens are purchased, converted, and redistributed, it's right there, because our network is only going to grow if the nodes are there are getting what the work that they did by providing us the storage space.
Absolutely. Now, one of the exciting things you mentioned before or alluded to was the prospects of growth of the nodes. Right now it's 20, so it's not a huge number. It's a secure number. It's, well and truly dispersed across the globe. What's the plan though in the future for your vision as a CEO to make sure we see better distribution?
It would be, like I said, is one group of nodes come from data centers and cloud providers. We're already working with some that we can, announce later on, but really basically have them come on because this is a new business environment for them to say, hey, we've got unused capacity, let's join here. So you've got a collection of good established companies that can be trusted with built-in networks that already communicate with each other. Then it's, really what we've always planned out is, for the November time is that the general public, our token holders, who are always excited saying, hey, we want to be part of this new economy, how this works, they can, download our software and start running it and become, incentivized and paid back for providing that network. So
Right.
that's how it's going to scale. It'll be a mix of, we see corporate partners who have the existing capacity and data centers around the world, and then individuals who allow for more endpoints to be out there. So we're all, like what I said before, is that you want to be at the edge. You want, no matter where the user is, not just country, maybe down to, you know, city or a part of a city aspect, that if you have more points out there that people can join, then you keep the speed of the network going.
Got it.
Fast.
So essentially top down and bottom up approach is quite smart, especially when you really want to secure significant stakeholders from the enterprise sector. Now, you mentioned something really interesting, that was the data centers. Right now, I think people don't really know globally just how powerful some of these data centers are for data, for business, actually, right around the world. Can you give us a bit of an understanding of just how invaluable what data centers are, and also engaging with them?
It's critical because, like I said, no matter what product, more data is being there, and there's not a shortage. There's not an oversupply, or let's just say, of, you know, need to use data centers there. Problem now is that a lot of companies have built up their data centers, like large ones, you know, even, you know, I believe Dropbox was AWS's biggest customer. And then Dropbox said, hey, we should build up our own, you know, file storage network,
Right,
because we're just paying too much there. But now a lot of individual companies are still have, from where they before, are still doing, saying, hey, we want to set up our own servers, but they're not being used all the time. Some estimates are that they're running at maybe, you know, 20% capacity. So if we can find the right partner saying, hey, you're not using this anyways, you can join us and we can use some of that network, and you guys can get a bit of a return on your investment there, that's a win-win.
Got it. Okay. So again, that the core value for many is that incentivization that only the token can afford in this manner through the blockchain and through cryptography. Now, one of the things one learning, sorry to cut you off, Brad, of that is that I think initially, when a lot of companies, ourselves included, are thinking that, hey, the individual has so much spare capacity at home, sitting on their laptop, Xbox, things like that. But what we found over the last year and a half, a lot of businesses themselves, what I just alluded to, they actually have the spare capacity, and they're much larger. So, you know, there's another target market to get into. Right, obviously. So it's about optimizing unused data. And so are you suggesting that that's one of the key focus for you? And that alludes also to your decentralized cache as well, your data cache. Talk us through optimization. You know, how do you best optimize my data, for example, or for consumers through your model?
What do you mean by, as a consumer, how their data?
Well, a consumer, or just anyone who has access to data, anyone who has spare data, for example. I mean, if we're going to utilize your service and your system, you could argue we're consumers or users, but how do you best optimize the parties that are going to engage with Bluzelle?
Yeah, so there's a couple parts. There is consumers with their own data aren't using us as, you know, store their own data or what they can do with it, right? That there's data marketplaces out there, different businesses built on top of that to leverage that and grow. For us, is at the individual level to join the network is, hey, you can actually store your data, you can use your device that you have at home, join the network to provide storage to us, and then you get a return on that. Now, our customers, on the other hand, are the ones who are coming to us for that storage and what they build on top, analytics, things like that's their applications. But we actually aren't giving away for individuals to manage their data or be able to resell it, things like that. That's not our model.
Okay, so if that's not your model, but yet storage is the narrative, can you talk us through that? I mean, what does it mean when we talk about data storage for Bluzelle?
What that means is that just like any database, the data needs to sit somewhere, be managed in a way that the end customer, you know, business can actually retrieve it and run their product. So for us, storage is, hey, we're not going to run a bunch of servers ourselves and nodes and, you know, things like that's the old way. Is that who has extra storage capacity that we can latch onto, and they join it. And those are the things that, you know, we've been, like I said, the model is built upon, is to figure out how much do we need, how much does the person able to partition off, and then over the next couple of months before November is say, hey, this is what we expect, that how the mathematic formula will work.
Right. Okay. So from your experience, and obviously having talked to you before, you knew a lot about the pre-blockchain marketplace for data storage. From the discussions you've had with various sectors, are you confident that there's a demand for you? Are they saying to you, we can't wait to use Bluzelle?
What we found is products that are already using like existing databases, things like that, they're entrenched, they're using those. How do you get the switch? That's why we need to focus on when people are building new software, where there's innovation departments or, regardless of the size of the company, when they're building new software, the movement that they're going to is, hey, faster deployment, focus on program, and no, we don't want to manage back end. Now, given that, when we go to the market and saying, hey, you know what? You guys go in there, but the traditional databases actually don't support those needs that you have. Bluzelle was actually designed to support those needs. So that's why I keep driving into how are new modern applications being built and designed, and what are those like CIOs looking at how they're architecting the new products that they're making, whether it's e-commerce, gaming, whichever. Our database actually fits that solution of where that market's going.
Right. Now, for you to have a significant uptake, you also need to have a good interface. How is that designed? I mean, do we get a chance to see that for, as part of your pitch when you do try and onboard more customers? How seamless have you made this for the, the software itself for engagement with these parties?
Well, with the party, what we need to do is, and initially is that, you walk them through, because there is one aspect of having a public and private key shared to us. So we know that they are who they are, and that's how they're using the network. This it's not a simple, like a consumer application where, hey, log in, fill in your forms, and there's a nice thing. This is really back-end architecture where people need to, connect through the right APIs, command lines to do what they need to do. What we will want to build out is kind of know what are the things that they haven't thought about? Like what's kind of the dashboard that would be nice for a customer to come in and basically see that, oh, which nodes is my data stored on right now in the world? How fast is it performing and speed? So those are kind of like better user experience tools that we will build out. But at the core right now, it's really, hey, they come to us, we set them up with their public-private key pair, sign the agreement, and then they just join the network and start storing data of which regions they want to be in on our nodes around the world.
Okay, so they don't need to have access to any particular front end interface to engage with you. They just simply need to interact with your own back-end infrastructure. That's
right. But there will be, like I said, once we get there, is have that login information where they can have kind of that consumer experience of, basically it's more about KPIs and performance. Right, okay. What about SDKs? I mean, what are you building as a tool suite for, interactants and people who are going to participate later, as you mentioned? Are you building out tools in your GitHub, for example? What we're building out right now is that the software that will be required by, let's say yourself, if you want to join the network and go on there, be able to download that and then basically see, hey, I've offered this storage, how's it performing? So that's something that will need to be designed on what we say is like on a Brad end, is that you can be able to log in and see, hey, how is your computer being used on this network, right, and have that authenticity. Makes sense. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about as well is the terminology. We hear of BaaS, as in blockchain as service. We hear about SaaS, software as service. How would you deem yourself? How would you regard yourselves in that light? Are you, in fact, a BaaS? No, because technically we're not a blockchain, right? That's we're using blockchain technologies. Customers of ours can be blockchains, right? Because they need off-chain data storage. So the customer segments we see is, like I said, traditional software applications, mid-sized enterprises who want to go serverless and have the benefits of that. Then you also have the blockchain world, where you got all these blockchains that they need and applications are being built on them. So by us integrating there, it's saying, hey, here's a decentralized data storage for you guys to use. So you're checking off-chain storage. So as a service, I would say, and it's a term that's been used by Forrester and other companies, it's just database as a service. No one is really, you're not spinning up a database, running it on your own, network on-prem. It's a service that you use. Right, so you're a DaaS. That's a new one for me. Actually, I think it's DBA. Okay, well, there you go. So there is an acronym. Database as a service. All right. Yeah, you can look it up. I will. So DBAS, that's a new one for me, but essentially... Actually, DBAAS. DBAAS, okay. Yeah. So, but essentially it is that middleware. That's the point, is you are the party in the middle that can enable blockchain to interact with you, and also those that want to utilize you as the database for their services, for their needs. Now that's interesting. What about regards to compatibility?
So if you're that middleman for as the database provider, decentralized by design, when we talk about the context of SQL, as you said, MongoDB and others that we can name an endless list, how do you fare there with regard to database compatibility?
Well, this is what's nice about our product. So one is, as a full database, we compete head on, right? So if somebody wants to use a NoSQL database instead of using MongoDB, hey, here's Bluzelle, and then we compete on those 5 things that I mentioned before, easy to deploy, predictable pricing, things like that. What's nice about us is we can also actually be used alongside those databases. So if somebody says, hey, I'm using MongoDB, and we're like, okay, where is it? Or I'm using an SQL server, and we have it in one server, one location around here, let's say Virginia. And we say, well, what about when you scale up? What's going to happen? And they go, well, we'll have to spin up another database somewhere else. I was like, well, that's when you want to use Bluzelle. Even though we're a database, one of the use cases is as a cache. And as a cache, what that means is, because our network's already deployed, you just point your main database to us, and we're basically taking the workload off of that main database. And now the specific benefit of this is that when that product scales and starts hitting real numbers, instead of that one database that Mongo just start firing up on cylinders costs so much, some of that is pushed out to the edge of Bluzelle. So what we estimate is that their overall cost as they scale up would actually reduce by like 70%.
Right, okay. So in that sense, you're also getting a big tick from those parties, from those essentially centralized database entities. So are you talking to any of them? Is there prospects of partnerships with those as well, given that, yes, there's competition, but also the potential for collaboration?
Well, you don't actually have to go to those, right? You actually just have to, it's going to, once again, go to the customer. Customer says, Brad, you're here and you've built a great application, a streaming tool for all the interviews you're doing. And I'd say to you, hey, Brad, what database are you guys running on the back end? And you go, we're using MongoDB. So we don't need Bluzelle. We're like, no, actually you do, because as you scale up and your audience is global and they're doing this, you need to be closer to there. Bluzelle can act as a cache for your database right there. So it's not even us going to MongoDB and saying, hey, partner up with us. It's actually having that customer saying, no, you can still add us on.
Okay, all right. Well, that's an important thing, because if I already have those in my suite of options, it doesn't preclude me from using Bluzelle. That's the big point.
That's right.
Okay, and that's quite a unique design. Are there any other parties, to your knowledge, like Bluzelle in the marketplace now, Pavel, that you're finding challenging because they're also pushing for the same market?
It would be the same. I mean, the one that's used also as a database in a cache is REDIS. So that's out there, and people do use that as a full database, and they use it as a cache. Now, the difference is that if you use Redis as a cache, so let's just go back to your example of, your big platform.
Right.
You have MongoDB, and you go, you know what? I'm going to use Redis as my cache to offload that work on. So let's say you set up that MongoDB. I forgot, which city are you in right now?
I'm near Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
Okay.
So choose one of them.
So let's just say it's in Brisbane. Okay. Right? And you got your database there. Redis has to be alongside where your original database is. It has to sit right there. So you're not getting that edge performance that we would. What we're saying is keep your Mongo there, but Bluzelle is all around the world already closer to customers. So that's how you should basically use us as a cache instead of Redis, because Redis has to sit in the same premise where the original database is.
I see. Whereas you're not bound because you're borderless. And that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now, with regard to, if we broke down some of the core benefits, you've mentioned some of those other reasons, but what would be the thing that you think is the biggest asset of all? Would it be because you're easy to use? Would it be because of the borderless nature? Is it because you're agnostic by design? And what's the core asset you think that really truly sets you apart above all the things you've listed?
I mean, one of the things my goal would be is it's not about one thing. Maybe we're just the simplest database out there. So it's not about one thing standing out. It's the collection made it simple to deploy, simple to scale, simple to price, simple.
You've memorized these terms,
simple
that's
to get to the edge.
Right.
Yeah,
so again, it's that simplicity that's created by these points.
And I go back to the Stripe example, right? They were, instead of going through a third party and getting your, Visa account so you can sell stuff online, they just made everything so simpler. It was just like, come in here and basically what? I think in less than a day, you can get your Visa, be able to charge credit cards. And the pricing was, hey, we're just going to do this one flat percentage fee, none of this stuff of less than this much, that much, and different ranges. So really, like I said,
Right.
Stripe doesn't go that
Makes a
where the
lot of
cheap.
sense, Pav. Now, in the context of the roadmap, since we spoke last, clearly you've made developments. You've made it. You've really shown that from the things that we've been talking about. But why hasn't it happened yet, where you haven't had that client base? Now, why why is that still in the future for you, given that you have been developing for some time now?
Well, developing, like I said, a database takes extremely long time, years for it to fully get to a maturation mark of getting everything you need. We've been only doing this for a year and a half, and we've gotten in a state where it can operate not just as cache, as a full database. And when you're talking to customers, they don't want to do something that's half-baked when it comes to data, right? You can go to them for feedback and saying, hey, what do you guys need? Build those features in. But they want to see a finished product, which now, and positioned right, that you can go to them saying, hey, here's what it does now. It's a full database. Here's the regions we are, and would you guys want to use it? Right. So I don't think we're behind at all. I think if anything, we're right on time.
Okay, so you're right on time. You're happy with the roadmap. What about funds? Now, you were fortunate in raising in a time when the market was pretty good. So I'm hoping that you still have funds. Talk us through that. I mean, how, in terms of the team, are you hiring? Is the team growing? Are you confident you have enough runway to continue to build this?
Definitely. We fortunately, we never had to also scale up really big, like get to like 20 to 30 people. We've always managed at a good team size, where I think we're at 13 now, and just added people on where we needed. If and the product is in a good state that, like I said, it's working, we can go to market. I don't think we need to hire another, let's say 10 people now to add features that we don't think we need. Okay. Let's just hire what we do need. Basically going back to what you said is, what does that customer out there now have in it? What do they want? Let's not build what we think they need of high scalability, whatever it is. Let's just give them what they need to actually come on board as customers. So I would see in the next couple of months where we would hire is mainly on the sales side. I was saying, hey, product works. We know how to sell this in. Come on, guys, get the right salespeople. We have the playbook. Let's start scaling this up. So that's where I see a lot of that happening. Right.
So you're really transitioning into just more verticals for your business soon because of the product fit, because it's going to be ready. I want to talk about timeframes in the roadmap for that, because you're a lean team. But what's your plan in terms of products, in dates? Have you built that into your roadmap so we can have an understanding of when we're going to see more of this unfurling of your products and services?
I would say over the next month, we want to release an updated white paper, right? Okay. That basically goes into what we've learned and how the products, basically what we kind of talked about, right? But in a succinct way of how it uses Ethereum as a registry service to run all our nodes. How does our authoritative nodes and replica nodes work and connect to other parties? Like all of that stuff that we're basically take what was theoretical to actual, what was delivered and where it's going. The next, like I said, the database is working now that we can go to market with, get those first couple customers in a private setting, hopefully announce those. But the main thing on the milestone side would be towards the end of the year, November, is to open up that, hey, more people like Brad and others can actually join the network now and start building out that capacity side. So we have made a design choice. So I don't think the database itself is not going to make a monumental movement outside of customers in the next one, but it will be on the supply network side that we will open that up.
Now, there's also a lot of DApp crap out there as well. A lot of the DApps we see really aren't doing a great deal. A lot of them don't have real utility. What's your position on that as you see, the need for onboarding of developers? Obviously you want to see more developers interact with your ecosystem. When we see so many contentious projects, that are really not there for building at all. What's your position more generally as you've seen the crypto casino unfold and all of the inherent challenges you see, just with some of that more contentious and questionable conduct?
I think what it is that we've got all these platforms out there building great technologies. And the main thing is we need to get real applications and users built in. So there's no real killer DApp out there right now. But once again, it goes down to what is a DApp? How does it actually improve as a consumer or user of that product, improve my life, right? Like if I went to a, enterprise customer and said, we're a decentralized database, they're like, okay, what does that matter, right? But when we say around the features of scalability, predictable pricing, then it's like, okay, that's what matters. So I don't think it's a matter of, like you said, that crap. It's like, what's going to be the products that actually can benefit the most from blockchain, that invites more developers to start building really cool things. And I think the one that everybody's seeing so far is like aspects around decentralized finance. Maybe some
DeFi.
of these, yeah, maybe, ultimately, would I want a decentralized Instagram? Yeah, sure, if the experience was just as good and fun and enjoyment, but the fact that decentralized doesn't matter. So I just think what we've learned over the past year and a half, not just us, but others, is that what are those use cases that are actually emerging
that can do
is going to draw more people to start build something, right?
Exactly.
The theoretical of having a decentralized Spotify or a decentralized this or that, they were great in theory that we all want to do ideologically, but not what the market wants.
I think that's where I'm alluding to, is more of that proof, more of that evidence that we're moving, that there is something in the dApp space that's beyond the ideal, beyond the theory, that it can actually evolve into something. Because quite sincerely, there is a lot of crap out there that doesn't actually do anything. And then for the most part, those that do are a very superficial design. What about blockchains themselves? You mentioned that there's a prospect of partnering with them, and they're going to have their own dApps. So how do you decide on which blockchains you may work with?
Yeah, those are that's a difficult part now, right? Because we do see so many blockchains out there. And I think it really comes down to right now is credibility, and people that we know are introduced, and we know that, hey, there's a product out there, it really works, and they've figured out a niche. And some of them come to us and saying, hey, you know what? People are starting to build certain things on us. Yeah, they might not be scaling right now, which we accept, but they said it'd be great to have your product there as off-chain storage, because once they do scale, they are going to need all those features and benefits. Because if a product's building something and doesn't say, oh, no, we don't need to use you, well, why? You don't plan to be successful or scale, then why are you in this, right? So I think it really comes down to seeing what's out there, hearing about it, talking to others, and saying, hey, we have these use cases that are being built. We haven't, now that your products, and it's even projects we were talking before, they say, hey, we were always looking at specific blockchain projects saying we wanted to use you guys, but you guys weren't ready. Now we're in a state that we can go to them and saying, hey, guess what? We can either be a replacement for the existing one, or we can work alongside your existing one.
So are we going to see more partnerships emerge? Will that be something that, is in the roadmap as well?
Oh, I mean, to me, that's all that matters now. It's not partnerships, whether they're partners or distribution partners to get to, or their customers using us, right? And that could be a blockchain, might not be a blockchain. But right now, for the next 6 months or towards the end of 2019, the real focus is go to market, get those customers who need us, start showing that they're using it, and basically be able to, show to the market that this product works. Just like any other startup, right? You build the product, go get your customers, and show that, hey, here's how it's using, and now you can scale up. So if our team focus is strictly on that.
Okay, well, if that's the case, though, for you building this product, don't you need other partners? Isn't there some, partnerships and announcements coming, I would imagine, that support you unfurling your own product? Aren't there facilitators of making this work?
I guess maybe all of us have been on this for a while. Whenever we announce partnerships, it was really vague, right? It was like, are they a customer? Are they a partner? Or we're just deciding to do stuff. So that's why I said partners are, like, a blockchain partner is critical, because that allows us to go to their customer who needs us. And then, so our focus isn't just, let's get some partnerships for the sake of partnerships. No, we want to get customers and partners.
And that's what we want to hear too, believe me, because we've seen a lot of superficial partnerships emerge just for the sake of it. And you're saying that's clearly not the case with Bluzelle, and that's what we want to hear. Now, with regard to this, the state of the token, I do want to talk about that. It's a tough topic, and I do respect that there's only so much you as CEO can really comment on this. But as someone leading out a project that has a tokenized economy, and we're already seeing the emergence of that now, are you at all concerned about some of the feedback that the community have already illustrated with regard to token price, with the way in which the token does move in a very speculative sort of space that is the cryptosphere? And are you employing any mechanisms, for example, adding staking or doing anything at all to really support the token utility? I mean, it's a tough question, this one, I know.
No, it's not. I think it's a valid question, because you wish you can just sit there and build and have fundamentals and things go along, right? And if there's anything that's we've learned is that, hey, there are different ways to activate that. And for us now is about, hey, let's get that node network out there where people can join and be active, because that is where they're going to stake. And so what can we give now for people to maybe become advanced users of it? So then maybe they get a bigger reward when it first launches, or they earn something back. So that is a place where we want to have more activity of our token. Okay. And really, like I said, maybe should have started earlier, but I think for us was, hey, focus on the product. And it is hard to, keep your eye on both things. But I do believe we're in a good state where, hey, if we're getting customers, then people know that, hey, these are real use cases. Customers can come on, they're going to use it. So the token is going to be started to be redistributed and rebought by the company and taken out. And then as they grow their network. Sorry, I was going to say, and as they grow their network, we do have to have those nodes and have people stake to build it out.
Right. So not only are you also adding to the security because you're employing staking, but one of the interesting things as well is you see a lot of the harsh feedback from many of the eager speculators when things don't necessarily go to plan, when they're thinking of price. Because often, the speculation is what drives much of the crypto casino and the crypto space, as I said. But underneath everything, fundamentally, it should be about use case, should be about utility, should be about longitudinal value of a project. So how has it been for you in dealing with this speculative aspect of crypto? Have you found it difficult, given that you've been out for a while now, Pav? Your token's been out, and we've seen similar trajectories, similar, price movements with many other projects. In fact, it started at a similar time to you. Has it been difficult for you to just survive in this speculative space?
I don't think, it's part of it. It's more than you thought. It's more than you anticipated it would be, right? The way I look at it is that the feedback we get from customers is like, hey, when, a lot of them are want it for the good intentions of the project and move forward. Like, how can you market better, right? How can we, get information across to people better so they can get excited and say, like, this is going the right way. Like I said, the way we proved out was like, hey, let's go get customers, I'll kick off. But I do know that some of the feedback we do get is not always being so technical on how things are, but just actually explaining how it works in the common language that the crypto community can understand.
Right.
So not going 3 layers. And that is really valid feedback, because it's like, let's not get like so deep into it. Just say in the words that you're like, oh, how are you using Ethereum to manage all your nodes, right? And we're going to be putting that out there, because that's what people understand. They Ethereum, smart contract, okay, that's how it applies to this, and this is how the ecosystem works. Right. If there's other projects out there that we need to oracleize with that helps us grow it, they understand those, and then that's how it puts in. So I do think that we don't have to go super technical. We can put it at a level that and that's one of the good feedbacks. And it's about making people understand that, not the deep technology, but how the ecosystem works and moves forward.
Could it also be the pace, because you're taking your time to make sure you get this right clearly? We've been speaking for a few times now, but it's been over a course of a year and a half. Crypto moves very fast. So a lot of the speculators, for example, they expect fast returns. They're used to that. Has that been a challenge in itself because of the unrealistic nature, perhaps, of the speculative industry that's been sort of created when you're literally trying to set your own pace to build this utility?
I guess a challenge there would be the challenge is that crypto, all these projects are done are actually very deep technical ones. I'm not talking about us, but most of the things being done, they're not consumer front-end applications that can grow super fast. Like, they're not Instagrams or Facebooks or things that can be used. The only ones that out there growing that fast are really exchanges and maybe wallets, but even wallets have a hard time to generate revenue because when it comes down to it's just a wallet, right? So I think it's just, there's a gap there of understanding that most of the projects people build into, it's stuff that's really deep infrastructure technology that takes years. And like I said, not just us, but multiple ones.
So isn't that an irony though? Because I totally agree with you, because if they're investing in something that's going to take potentially a decade to really build out the infra, of these layer 1 and layer 0 technologies, then, because you are something different, you are that middleware, could you argue that it's likely that you'll have more of that empirical proof of adoption and value earlier than many of these infra, because you're not actually a layer 1?
Well, I think if anything is taking 10 years is in a modern era, that's too long. And I think by going with that pace, it's hard to even keep teams, staff motivated, because people are used to working on a project for a couple of years, seeing success and go on. So if you have
well,
these tenure,
you know, to be fair to many of the people listening though, there's some projects who've been out for 2 years with no token listed yet. So, you know, that's another issue as well, is that a lot of people are literally waiting on the sidelines to see their own projects that they've supported come out.
Well, there's listing, and there's also showing product value. And going back to what your thing is, I think because we're not dependent on a blockchain built out full infrastructure to go get our customers, where we need to be a database to compete against the ones we talked about. So we can go to a market a bit faster. And really, just like any other startup, you know, if we're back, you want to say, hey, build the product, go get customers, scale that up. And it's not a, like I said, whereas ours is a deep tech, but it's not such that we're creating new inroads everywhere.
Right, and that's exciting too, because you're also utilizing modern day contemporary technology, not having to build everything from scratch and just simply reinvent the wheel. Now, you mentioned products before several times. Is it planned for this year, what we're actually going to see that next step of customers and products? Like, can you give us some sort of guarantee that's going to happen this year?
Well, I can't do any guarantees, but the product, like what we want that we can go to market with as a database and go get them is done. So let's go get those customers, and then we can, you know, publish those use cases, show that's out there. And like I said, the one that we have to do is that supply side of that. Our token holders who've been there for a year and a half go, hey, customers are coming, they're showing use cases. Let's start joining the network and staking now. So that's something we need to deliver for sure, because that's the only way the network is going to grow.
Right.
But the other one is, like I said, getting those customers that we can officially announce and saying, hey, here's how they're using the product.
Yes, I'm looking forward to those more direct announcements. Obviously, there's some big ones coming. Now, speaking of problems, one of the things we've seen a lot of is dumping from VCs. We see that, you know, right across the board with many different projects, because obviously their main focus was, you know, a quick fix for them. A lot of them were just, you know, raising capital fast. It was a fast market. Now, did that happen to you? Were there VCs that obviously invested in you that you then had to watch as they, through their unlocked you know, opportunities, they could go and dump those tokens? Quite rightly, I mean, it was their opportunity to do so. But was that something that you experienced, and was it difficult, if that did happen, for you to then, you know, continue through?
It is. I mean, like you said, people have their own motives and how the space is, right? You want to work with the right partners that are there to support, but you know, there's certain things, you know, you can't get weighed down on, right? And I think that if anything over the past year and a half, it was just really learning from everybody. It was like, hey, how much do you need? Where do you need to get to? And really build these products to come to fruition. So, you know, I still talk to a bunch of the people who invested in us before, keep them updated so that, hey, if they see that these guys are going the right way, let us get back in there, let's support. So it's really about maintaining, you know, controlling what you can control.
Exactly.
I don't know if I really answered.
No, I think you really did. I mean, you basically just, you know, you have a positive frame of mind and thinking, in that regardless of what has happened, you're just simply focused on trying to build the utility fundamentally.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, if you're just any other startup, if you know that, hey, I've got a great product here, we're doing it well, we're going to achieve product market fit, we're going to get customers, people using it, then I will beat them all, right? It doesn't matter. Right. It's like, that's what matters.
It was more to raise the question about how crypto VCs have often behaved in comparison to traditional VCs. I mean, as you know, there are series rounds approached with and it's very different. I mean, you have to evidence more of your success, your more products, your development, but it hasn't been the case in crypto entirely. And so that's why I asked you, CEO, because some of these VCs just more generally haven't always been completely forthright with their intention, which was simply just for the capital and not for belief in the utility.
Well, then we can also take a step back, is that companies that got funded or anyone, did they do real proper due diligence of building out their whole business models in cases that could go to a VC and respect that? They also, you know, projects also did, like, hey, here it is. We can avoid VCs, we can get funding and build our product. So there is that trade-off. You can't have it both ways, right? Because certain questions would be asked from a VC more directly about where the product's at than
exactly. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
So I don't think we can all. I don't think people have the right to sit there and complain how investors did or react when, you entered the game in a certain way too.
Okay. All right. Well, what about in terms of the future with regard to website development? So I understand that, you got some movement there, you're changing things up.
Oh, I mean, it's always you're trying to go to the market, right? What's fitting, what can sell to the direct customer, and what's the messaging that goes. So this is just any other startup, right? You're always playing with what catches their attention, what's going to cause for conversion to then come interact. Or like, let's say you're talking to some enterprise and they have 30 seconds, they hear about you, they go to the site. It's just like seeing a billboard, right? So what is the message that's going to attract them to come onto there? So we're always going to be, changing copy here or there as we nail our positioning, value statement and positioning statement really well, that they go, okay, that's what I need. Looks like they got customers. Let me call these guys and use their product.
Right. So are there going to be some slogan changes, or can you allude to more of the changes you're actually making?
Oh yeah, it would definitely be on that positioning of what's that value, what's going to scream out to them to say, hey, we want to use this product. So they'll definitely, like just saying it's a decentralized database might not excite anybody, right? But hey, simplest database you ever used, get, save on this and that, maybe that does. So there's definitely going to be those that are done, and that's how you get a customer, right? So
and it makes a lot of sense, Pavel, because right now those that have gone past mainnet, they're actually doing something similar to you, where they've actually redesigned their whole website to be more product and service geared. And certainly one that isn't necessarily explicating the blockchain itself, because it lies underneath. It rests, for those technologists who want to know more about it and go and read a white paper. So what you're saying does actually make a lot of sense to consumers, users, people who can participants of your ecosystem, because it needs to be simple. If you're going to have a future, if you're going to be able to establish and assert yourself globally, that interface, that is the website, quite important.
Yeah, I mean, we can't all be R&D projects for the rest of our lives, and that's what our website says, right?
Right.
I'm saying not us. I'm just saying people do. It's like, hey, it's a decentralized feature of this much. Like, it's just really about the project and the tech, not about how's that customer going to engage.
Sure.
We will improve. Have sections on our site, obviously, for token holders and people get interested. Here is the back end. Here is the philosophy. Here's how you can learn about it. But on the front facing, it's got to be identifying who that customer is at that point.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Now, regulation right now with Libra in the limelight, I don't know if it's in the light or in the dark, but certainly it's in the spotlight. Are you concerned at all about regulation? Are you concerned about the US stance, for example, taking the hard line, or are you confident that you're doing everything right to make sure that you're a genuine utility and that you're compliant with all of the jurisdictions around the world?
On that side, as a software product and technology, I totally believe we're a utility. We've got, we've met with a number of jurisdictions, lawyers, gotten sign off that back that up. I think if any worry would be is that if everything in blockchain and crypto got painted with one brush and said, no, none of them are utilities, and the government said, we're not doing anyone, then you got some really cool products and technology being built that might not.
Right. Well, we're seeing that that's unlikely now that we've seen approvals through Blockstack, for example, with a Reg A approval for the utility, which is a little different to the security narratives we've heard in the past. So are you seeing nuances at the very least of acceptance and endorsement and support from a regulatory standpoint from parties like the US, from nations that are as powerful as they are, to really endorse what you stand for?
I think so, because look what Blockstack did, and when we talk to the government in Singapore and other countries, like, you're always stressing the technology and what it's used, and that this is a valuable product, and the market needs something like this. The token aspect, that's almost secondary. So I think so it looks like people are responding well to that.
For sure. And what excites you most in the future with regard to a final statement, perhaps, of this interview? It's been a long one, I know, and if you've been listening, you've survived, but clearly you've built out a lot of this, and now the next move is to really showcase what you can do in the real world and in the mainstream, perhaps. What's the next step forward if you want to really send a core message to the listeners?
For me, personally, is that we built a product, spent years doing this, and the value is going to be achieved is by getting customers, not by, running around building cool stuff. Is that, be measured like any other startup company, whether it's Cloudflare or whoever, is like, can we get customers? Can we get this to scale? Right. So if anything, that's what I'm excited about. That I believe we've got the product done in a great state, and I'm super happy with that. We've nailed down our positioning that we're going to unveil in the next couple weeks. So when people see the site maybe have some slight changes, they'll understand why. And they'll always be the token, and we'll have that updated token or white paper to show that, hey, this isn't something brand new. It's just like, this is what we've learned over the past year. So we satisfy that token side, the crypto side. They're like, oh, great, this is what they're doing, and this is how everything works now. And for us is, let's go to market and really build a
really exciting.
Business. That's what excites me.
I really like hearing that you're also going to update the token mechanics. Let us know exactly how those correlations work, because that is so important to those people right now who have supported you all this way, even before you have the real empirical proof of adoption and utility. But Pavel Bains, you are the CEO of this really interesting startup. It's all about being serverless. You are fundamentally that database for the future, and you're integrating technology for the real world potentially, and we're going to see more of it. You're not giving away a lot. I really noticed that with regard to partners. You're being tight-lipped about it, but there's obviously reasons for NDA why. Hopefully in the future, when they are released, we can catch up again. But I do thank you, because you have provided for a very robust update for all those who simply wanted to know more about what you are about and what you plan to do in the future. So I wish you all the best, mate, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate this.
You're very welcome.